We are one-dimensional. We have shown over these two games that we are a one-dimensional team and we have one way of playing.
2 of the 3 goals scored were by defenders. The United States has to do the same thing. They have to get better. They have to continue to raise the bar and raise the standard because these clubs are right behind them.
And she walks on the field like she's still the star. She has confidence, her mindset. She is a leader.
My favorite thing I saw from Ertz in the second game against Ireland was she gets subbed onto the field and she jumps over Huerta for a throw-in header, just like knocks her out of the way and heads the ball. I love her sense of urgency.
I would be a heat-seeking missile just come flying across with like no regard for my own body or for the body of the person I was hitting. And I would just hit as hard as I possibly could.
If you're going to compare a free safety to a 6, which I think is the perfect comparison, I'm going with Troy Polamalu.
To be good in the MLS, your designated players, your foreign players, have to just really love the game.
Welcome back into Straight from the Pitch. I'm Anna Witte, joined as always by Scotty Schweitzer. The U.S. women's national team just finished playing in their 2 final friendlies against Ireland before head coach for the national team, Vlatko Andonovski, reveals his final roster for the Women's World Cup coming up in July. So the women's national team played Saturday. They beat Ireland 2-0. Then Tuesday night, they beat Ireland 1-0. The 2 big storylines, obviously, Mal Swanson getting injured in the first game, tearing her left patella tendon. And then Julie Ertz playing for the first time in over 611 days. But before we get into the 2 hot topics for the national team, let's talk about this most recent game that the U.S. played against Ireland. Scotty, for you, what did you see and what did you learn from the individuals, but the national team as a whole?
Well, I think we have to look at both games. And when I say that is because going into the first game, we can assume we think we know how Ireland's going to play. And to me, I was thinking they were going to sit back. They were going to try to hold their lines. They're going to try to block their passing lanes. And they were going to let us have possession of the ball and try to counter and maybe get some free kick goals. So the first game happens, and it's exactly what we think. So maybe going into that game, we have a different game plan, and we kind of got thrown off. And that's acceptable in a sense. For me, not really. If you're that position, that coach, you should have a better idea of what a team's going to do against you and how they're going to play. Then we come to tonight's game. And going into the game, I'm saying Ireland did their job in the first game. They are playing to understand their group. They have Australia, Canada, and Nigeria. So there is no reason for them to change their way because they're going to have to play that exact same style to get results in their group, to get out of their group. And Ireland sits in the exact same low block. And we have no answers for it, really. I mean, we get 1 goal. It's a lucky goal. It's a cross. If Horan stops her run, the goalie saves it easy, but she was a little bit worried about contact, it looked like. She made a bad play with her feet and then a bad play with her hands, and then we get a goal. So for me, we are one-dimensional. We have shown over these 2 games that we are a one-dimensional team and we have one way of playing. And we might do okay. They remind me a little bit of a couple years ago, Liverpool. Liverpool was really good. We lost a couple players. We didn't have dribblers anymore. And we played if a team sat back on us, we had trouble scoring. If a team came out and said, oh, we can play with you, we were athletic, we were fast, we could beat them. We needed teams to open up on us. Well, not many teams are going to try to open up on the United States because they can't handle our physical strengths, our athletic attributes. So Ireland's going to sit back on us. They played a 4-5-1, which allowed us to leave our center backs and push 1 up into the midfield, which then allowed our 6 to push higher up as an 8, which allowed our 8 to become a 10, which allowed us to go with 2 strikers. And we still would have been fine defensively. We still would have been numbers up, but we never did it. We never tried to break the lines with small passing. I think maybe I counted 2 or 3 times we tried to do it. And the funny thing is, Ireland did it in the last 15 minutes against us. Did exactly what we should have been doing the whole game. Play in, play out, play back in, play back out, get a cross in once we got them out of their positioning. But they had no reason to run or leave positionings because all we kept trying to do was hit it over the top, which there was no space in behind. And the goalie made a little bit of an error in the first game, a big error in the second game. But for the most part, Ireland's goalie was really good, and she did her job as a sweeper keeper and did come out and clear up messes when she needed to. So for me, what I learned is we what we bring in off the bench is exactly what we already had on the field. And to me, it's the one good thing is it's not really a drop off. It's just exactly the same thing. It's
Mhm.
just exactly what I just saw comes right into the. And if you're a little hotter than the player that came off, then you're better. Like so for me, when I look at this team, there are a couple players who I think completely played their way off in these two games. Now I don't know if that's going to happen, but for me, I thought man, there's some things that were very evident that with certain players, this is teams are going to play like this against us. They have to, and if they do that in the World Cup, where the setting gets a little bit more intense and the nerves get a little bit bigger, if they can squeak one goal, we're going to be in trouble, and we have no right ever being in trouble in the game with the talent that we have on the field.
The biggest stat that shows that we're one dimensional, rather, the U.S. women's national team is one dimensional, is that 2 of the 3 goals scored were by defenders. One of them being Alana Cook, a center back. If Alex Morgan and Ashley Sanchez, Ashley Hatch can't get involved and get themselves opportunities, and it has to be the center back, clearly adjustments have to be made to not be one dimensional. And you mentioned players subbing on, subbing off. O'Hara and the outside backs changed. So O'Hara and Huerta started tonight. And the Saturday game, it was Dunn and Fox. And the broadcast made kind of a big deal about Fox being so central and not using her width as much, which I agree, but at the same time, Fox found herself in some good spots. Fox scored a goal. She's good at dribbling down the middle. That's where she wants to play. Huerta's, one of those players for OL Reign and for the national team. She wants to put balls inside the box, on top of the six. I know you have a thought, Scotty. You want to hear it, but before we swing it back to anywhere, I want to hear who the 2 players are that play themselves off the team tonight for you.
Well, Huerta to me has played herself off the team. I'm sorry, I just don't think she's good enough for what we need. She plays when she does cross it, it's a looping, floating ball, which gives teams are a lot bigger than they used to. So our
Yes.
size on free kicks is not as big as a factor as it was 5 years ago. So balls have to be driven in. They have to be skimmed off the heads. They have to be deflected in. I think Huerta played herself off the team. I really do. And to be honest, I think Rodman is off. I wouldn't take Rodman. I don't think she's intelligent enough to break teams down when it gets. She did exactly the same thing every single time tonight. Take it down the line, take it into the corner, which is exactly how Ireland was set up. They wanted us wide and deep into the corners. That allowed their numbers to get back centrally, clog up holes, make messes, clear balls. That's all they were looking to do. That's all they were trying to do. Keep it wide, let them play wide. We're not as fast as them, but if we can get them down the lines, then we can keep them away from our goal, and it works. So
Two,
those
two
are
of
the 2
Ireland's
points.
best players were on the flanks, were the defenders and the attacking midfielders. That's the best players, and that's where the U.S. was trying to attack.
I just think it was just the same play over and over and over. And to me, is like if it doesn't work the first 2 times, it's not working number 3 either. It's not working number 4, and they just keep going back to the well, back to the well, and we're better than that. We're better than that. And like again, it'd be one thing if we played Ireland and we weren't expecting it. We just played them. We just played them, and they played no different. Nothing was different. The only difference was O'Sullivan wasn't the captain. That was the difference.
Mm-hmm.
They played the exact same formation, the exact same style. They didn't do anything different. They were like, "Here's this how we're gonna like." I think Ireland should have called us and said, "Hey, just letting you know, we're gonna play the exact same way because you're not gonna do anything different." Like to me, is like we need to be better than that. We need to be better than that.
Yeah. And Andonovski made a point too that he's going to be going to NWSL games. He's still going to be going to club matches to evaluate these players. But it's also very clear that Vlatko does have 26 players in his evaluation pool. He's not looking anywhere else because he hasn't brought anyone else in. You can make the argument that he's trying Hatch on, subbing in for whoever or for Morgan and playing next to so-and-so. Sure, there's 3 or 4 players who are getting closer time and playing together in situations maybe they haven't played at a club level in the past, but we're not seeing anybody different. So whatever we saw against Ireland will probably be what we see in the World Cup. And teams are getting better. Countries are getting better. They're getting better talent, they're getting better coaches, they're getting better equipment to get better. The national team for the United States has to do the same thing. They have to get better. They have to continue to raise the bar and raise the standard because these clubs are right behind them. 2-0, 1-0, not a good enough win for this national team. And Alex Morgan, with the amount of talent she has, Sophia Smith, with the amount of talent, they didn't even get good looks on frame. So there just has to be an adjustment and maybe a challenge for some different players coming in to challenge them and argue for that spot. Lynn Williams, we didn't see her play in either one of these games.
I think, right, like Lynn Williams, were we protecting her elbow? Like, to me, if I'm Lynn Williams, I'm happy I didn't play because maybe I come in and do the exact same thing Rodman, and then fans are saying, okay, she played herself off the team. So before we started talking about those two players that I thought were coming off, when we played the first game, I thought that was, in that game, the way to attack was they only have one up top. We have two good defenders out there. What's the girl from San Diego? Sorry, I always forget their names.
Alex Morgan or
Kerma played in the back.
Germa. Yeah, Naomi
And
Germa.
she's got speed. She's got tons of speed. They only had one up top. They were never going to be dangerous. So it allowed us, and we talked about it on an earlier show where I was saying I'd like to see Tina Davidson come back because that allows us to take our two outside backs and push them centrally as midfielders, as 2 6s, which allows our 6 to get higher, which allows our 8 to get higher. And that's where we were a little bit effective in the first game because Dunn's been a midfielder. Fox played at Carolina. She snuck into the midfield in times at games there. She got a goal in the first game because she was high pressed up in the field. I understand that we want to attack on the flanks, but if the flanks were being given to us, they're being given to us for a reason. So what we needed to do was take what they didn't want us to have and find ways through the middle, which I know O'Sullivan's great, but that's a lot of ground for her to cover. So if we had 4 or 5 players in there, they can only cover so many passing lanes. We could have played in, back out, had our triangle set, had our diamond set, played back out wide. When we wanted to go wide, pull them out of the middle. And today we didn't do it at all. I didn't see O'Hara go into the middle. I didn't see O'Hara step high. Huerta never really – at the end of the game, we were winning 1-0. Vlaco's on the sidelines pushing them back. Like, we're not here to win this game. We're here to learn, to try things, to understand things so we can win a World Cup. So, like, you're trying to win a 1-0 against Ireland just to get a win. Like, to me, it's just I know I want to win a game. Of course I want to win a game, but I want to win every game. So I have to do things in certain games to understand and to learn in order to win games later down the road. Really important games, really super important games. Ireland came back. They did their job. They learned. They're going to be better for it in the World Cup. I'd be shocked if they don't have a good showing in the World Cup. Now, today, Australia goes in and beats England. When England beat us a couple months ago or whatever it was, man, I know the score was 2-1, but it was not a 2-1 game. They manhandled us. They did whatever they wanted to on the field. So now Australia goes in there and puts a whooping on them, and they're going to be one of the host countries. Like, England can beat us. Spain can beat us. Germany can beat us. Australia has a good chance of beating us. They seem to have been playing really good in the last calendar year. Like, we have some things, and we're squeaking by Ireland on a fluke goal by our center back. I don't think it was a fluke goal, the Fox goal, but a lot of Cook goals is just a fluke goal. Yeah. Like, you can see it on her face. She didn't even want to celebrate. She didn't even want to be a part of it like that. It was just a terrible goal. Like,
Cook was going for Lindsey Horan. She was right on top of the goalkeeper. It just kind of nudged Brosnan off, who, by the way, goalkeeper for Ireland, Courtney Bronson, is phenomenal and has saved Ireland in many ways. It was a mistake, a fluke goal on her part, but she's going to be a huge piece for this Ireland team in the World Cup. Her physical presence, she's got great size. You could tell she's a great communicator for this back line. You mentioned the national team, the U.S. women's national team, adjustments, things that we want to see maybe change or maybe stay consistent. But one of the biggest pieces for the U.S. women's national team before Saturday, heading into Saturday, was Mal Swanson. Swanson had 7 of the 14 goals in the past 5 games in 2023. She was on fire, not only for the U.S., but also for a club team in Chicago. In the first half, she goes into a tackle and tears her left patella tendon. Tuesday morning, Swanson announced on her Instagram that she had successful surgery. She did not announce a timeline of returning or anything. She just announced that she's grateful for the support and appreciates the prayers. So glad to see her in good spirits on social media. Not good for the U.S. women's national team if she is not there for the World Cup. She will be 25 at the end of this month. So she is still young. She'll be 29 at the next World Cup if she doesn't make it to this World Cup in Australia, New Zealand. However, with Swanson not playing and potentially, let's say she's not at the World Cup, Scotty, is it a 1-for-1 switch or a formation change?
Based on what we've been watching over the last few months, I think it's just a likeness for a likeness. I don't think we're going to change
Yeah.
formation. I think he's set into his formation. He thinks that's what works for him. I don't know if that's what works for him, if that's what worked in the past, and he's afraid to change it. I don't know. But I think he's just going to bring in another player who's very similar to Swanson, who, for me, I feel terrible for Swanson. Here's a player that's left
Mm-hmm.
off the last World Cup team. Granted, she might have not been in the best of form, but there was a few players that weren't in the best of form. I think that went to that World Cup team that she was a better player than. But instead of complaining about it, she goes home, she works harder, she studies the game more to help her attributes. And what happens? She comes out on fire this year, just on fire, scoring every game that she plays in. She's a huge focal point of the team. You can see teams are shifting their defense to her side now, which allows the other players to be more effective in the game. But watching what happened tonight, like I think if it was going to be that big of a difference, he would have done it. I think tonight would have been the night to change things up. You know how the other team's going to play. So for me, I think him playing Thompson, and then when Thompson goes down with that little calf injury,
Gasp,
the,
everyone.
the concern on their faces, that coaching staff's face was like, if she was just coming in to see if she was good enough, there would have been no concern. They would have said, oh, go off the field, we'll play down a man. But there was complete concern that, oh no, our replacement for our star player so far this year has gotten hurt. And the funny thing is, I thought of all the forwards, she was the most effective anyway. She played intelligent and she was dangerous at times when we were able to break that back line. And a lot of times I still can't believe how fast she is and
Mm-hmm.
how quick she hits her top speed. But she's a very similar player to Swanson. So I think it's just going to be a like for like change. And to be honest, just reading facial expressions and body language, I think that's their replacement.
Right. After the first Ireland game, Vlatko Ananoski in his press conference said that they moved Sophia Smith onto the left side where Swanson normally plays. Rodman gets subbed on, plays on that right side where she also plays with the spear. And Vlatko said the reason why they moved Smith to the left side is she had 3 goals against Kansas City in the second week of NWSL play. She's comfortable on the left side. She can find angles on the left side. So with what Vlatko Andonovski said after the first Ireland game, I predict Alex Morgan in the 9, Smith on the left, Rodman on the right, or maybe even Thompson. It depends on how much they want to take a risk on Thompson right off the jump. Sure, like you need depth in the World Cup. People get injured, people get tired. Everyone's going to see minutes. However, I see Smith sliding into that role for Swanson based off of what the head coach said after the game. So, yeah, I agree too. I mean, if you're not going to change it up in the last game before you announce the roster, there's no way you're going to change it up 2 to 3 months before you head out to the World Cup. So it'll be interesting to see how this all comes to play. I'm pumped to see who is on the final roster. I've never been this excited to see who was on the starting 11 starting Tuesday night, but I'm definitely pumped for the announcement. The
Me
second
too.
big storyline is Julie Ertz. 611 days since she's played in a game. She reportedly has been training with some MLS Academy players in the Phoenix area. Ertz, my favorite thing I saw from Ertz in the second game against Ireland was she gets subbed onto the field and she jumps over Huerta for a throw-in header, just like knocks her out of the way and heads the ball. I love her sense of urgency to win the ball. She's high up the field, she's dropping back defensively, and Julie Foudy said it best in a lot of ways. She said, Ertz is that piece for the U.S. women's national team, that fire and that bite at times that this team is missing. And I completely agree because she just wants to win. She gets stuck in. She's a good communicator. You can tell people respect her, A, by the armband, and B, the communication that we see from her, the broadcast is showing us. Ertz just brings such an energy and a bite to this team, like Foudy says. And I would be surprised if she doesn't get more minutes than Sullivan in that 6th role because of the energy and the funness that she brings to the pitch in the World Cup, if they bring her.
I'm going to go with it. If those are the sixes he brings, Sullivan's going to be seeing a lot of time on the bench. The game dramatically changes when Ertz comes into the game. When Sullivan's in the game, she plays safe. She sits too deep for me, and especially against Ireland, we didn't need anyone deep. They had no one forward. We needed to press higher up. She needed to become a player with her actual Sullivan needed a player with her back to the goal, basically. Even though that's not normally what the Sixers' role is, but in this game, that's what the Sixers' roles needed to be. In the first game, it was way more uh, you could see it easier. When Ertz came in the game, we got way high up the field. We played in their half. In this game, not so much. I don't know if it was a little fatigue. I don't know. She knew she was playing 45, but we still were better than in the first half. When Ertz comes in the game, she plays to win. She pushes the tempo. She controls the speed of the game, and she also defends field. She doesn't just defend players; she defends the field space. So because Ertz pushes higher, it draws our back line higher up the field. Because when Sullivan's playing, a lot of times our two center backs are in our half. They're in our half of the field. When Ertz is playing, they are right on the line, and one of them is pushed a little bit higher, almost to the top of the circle, because they have to just to stay connected. So for me, if those are our two sixes, then Ertz is the starter. You got to get her. She's got to get some playing time so that
Right.
she gets cleaner on the ball, because
Right.
that's what was off. I mean, again, they were playing those long balls, trying to loop in balls through, but she has her. Good God, she hasn't played in whatever how many days, and she walks on the field like she's still the star. She has confidence. Her mindset. She is a leader. She comes on that field, and it's like everybody's like, "Oh, don't mess up," because I don't want to deal with Julie in the locker room. Basically, like those teams need that type of player. So for me, if I'm looking at just those two, which it seems to be that's what he's doing, because I know I'm definitely not looking at just those two as my six. We all know who I want to come in as a six. And again, if I can get, for me, I get Julie Ertz. I'm bringing Coffee to learn from Ertz. I don't know if Coffee's going to play. I'm hoping we get up a 4-0 lead and I can get Coffee in there. But I'm going to put their lockers right next to each other. If you have to have a roommate, she's going to be roommates with her. I want Julie Ertz to turn Coffee into the pro that Julie Ertz was, so the national team doesn't miss a beat going forward. Sullivan cannot become Ertz. It's just not in her DNA, but Coffee has it in her DNA. And just from these two games, both times Ertz came in, the game dramatically changed. And you're like, okay, now we're going to go after him. Now we're going to come after him. Whereas before it was like, if it works, great. Let's just not give up a goal. Like, I just don't think that's the way the U.S. is supposed to play soccer. 100% not on the women's side. We're number one in the world for a reason. Let's go be number one. Let's go and be we're letting teams hunt us basically. And I understand that Ireland sat back, but they're like teams are coming after us. We're losing our fear factor that helps us win games. Teams aren't fearing us like they used to. But when Ertz came in, you could see Ireland was like, oh boy, here we go. We gotta crank it up, and we've been out here for 45 minutes already cranked up because they did get fatigued, Ireland, because of how much work they had to do just to cover spaces.
Ertz demands the same respect that I believe Crystal Dunn what is that demands as well. So I think that Ertz, like you said, Sam Coffey, you can tell not only on the pitch, do you probably agree that Ertz and Coffey could learn a lot from Ertz, but you watch the post-game pressers from Portland in the 2022 season. Sam Coffey's a rookie. Portland lost a handful amount of times, and they put Sam Coffey up there to talk with a bunch of people she can't see in a Zoom call similar to this. And her demeanor, how she carries herself, she's so positive. She remembers a lot of the game and speaks highly intelligent to it instead of being like, yeah, that was a bad pass. Yeah, we shouldn't have done that. Oh, we'll do better next time. No, she holds her team to a standard herself. And you see the same thing for Ertz. So I don't think Vlatko's going to bring Sam Coffey to this World Cup. However, I would love to see and hear the relationship that Ertz and Sam Coffey have, maybe even right now from someone introducing them, because you're right. Coffey could learn a lot from Ertz, just off the field as well. They seem to have similar personalities. I know they're both Christians. I know that they speak openly about that. Off the field, they have a lot of similar interests that they could certainly learn from one another. The U.S. men's national team plays Mexico in a friendly on April 19th in Glendale, Arizona. It's not during a FIFA window, so we will probably see a handful of MLS players playing in that game just based off of where players are playing in the States. It will be fun game to watch against Mexico. We'll definitely be talking on that here. We mentioned the 6 role with Julie Ertz and Andy Sullivan for the U.S. women's national team right now. However, the 6 role is easily comparable to a free safety in the NFL. So, Scotty, if you were to pick a free safety in the NFL and Pop Warner in college football, wherever you've watched football in any league before, who would you pick as your number 6 on your team and why?
Okay, so when we thought about this question, I always thought when I played soccer, that's exactly how I tried to play. I thought I was a free safety. If I played football, I would play a free safety. I would be a heat-seeking missile, just come flying across with like no regard for my own body or for the body of the person I was hitting, and I would just hit as hard as I possibly could. So when I thought about safeties that I would want to play my 6, I had a whole list. I had Earl Thomas, Sean Taylor, who played for the Redskins, and I had told you for the last couple of years of his career, he always wore soccer cleats anyway. He wore the Total 90s by Nike. I had Pat Tillman on there because he's what a team player.
Right.
Brian Dawkins, Ronnie Lott, John Lynch, Troy Polamalu, your boy from the Steelers. But I had to go with Ed Reed. And one of the reasons I went with Ed Reed was one is in his intelligence, but he was also a ball hawk. He was he could get the ball. So like my 6, I don't just want clogging up space and getting us in the right positions. I want him stealing balls and starting plays. So when I think of a free safety like Ed Reed, I think not only is he helping me break up plays, but he's helping me start plays because he gets the ball and then he can do things with it. So I would have to go with Ed Reed. Plus, I love the Canes, especially back in his era. So Ed Reed would be the free safety that I would pick to play that 6 role.
I hate you for picking a Baltimore Raven, but I also love it because Ed Reed played in the era of football in the NFL where it was hard hitting, hard tackling, really good football. I mean, the AFC North back in those days when he played was just prime football, and I loved it. Not the same anymore, but
No, it's not. It's not the
it's
same at all.
it's kind of depressing. But I like your pick. You mentioned mine. Of course, I go with the Pittsburgh Steeler, and it's not because it's my favorite team. Troy Polamalu, to me, was epitome of class, but on the field, he was such a rock star. There was a highlight reel back in high school and middle school that I used to watch of Troy Polamalu, just like the one where he jumps over the pile and tackles and sacks the Titans quarterback. There's one where he perfectly times the rush. As soon as the center snapped the ball, he was right there, obviously got the sack. And even the play-by-play was thrown off. Thought it was a false start, and of course it's not. And he just his ability to read the game. He knew when to step in. He knew when to drop off. He was very calm under pressure, and he played in 158 games, 32 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, forced 14 fumbles, and he made 783 tackles, where 583 of them were solo tackles. Mentioned the stuff off the field with Troy Polamalu. Never got in trouble. He was a great leader. Everyone respected him. Reminds me of Julie Ertz in that way, where he just commanded that. He never did anything that ruffled any feathers. So if you're going to compare a free safety to a 6, which I think is the perfect comparison,
Yeah.
I'm going with Troy Polamalu.
I love Troy Polamalu. I think he's
Yeah.
probably if my watching of football, I think he's the best free safety I ever saw. Like just the all around game. He could turn into a middle linebacker. He could call the plays for you. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic pick. And you're right. He was pure class all the time, on and off the field.
I love the fact that he did the commercials. I was kind of nervous that he would kind of step away from the limelight when he was done playing because he is very quiet, super reserved guy, but he does the Head and Shoulder commercials still. I mean, I wonder how much he makes from them because they're phenomenal. I love his personality in them.
He's great. I like him.
All right. So, last thing, MLS is a fifth of the way through the season. And a handful of the teams that we're watching, LAFC dominating against Austin. They have 5 wins and 2 ties on the season. St. Louis handed their second loss by Seattle, which certainly was a tale to have. Seattle figured it out in the second half. Then we have Cincinnati, kind of a sleeper team, only won by 1 point in their wins. They have 5 wins and 2 ties as well. And then we have Inter Miami, and their second team in MLS history to lose 5 straight matches immediately after collecting 6 points from their first 2 matches of a season. Inter Miami's your team, Scotty. We touched on a few topics of, I'm so sorry. The picture that they put of that stat was Phil Neville like kicking the wall at one of the fields.
Yeah, yeah.
It broke my heart. But of all of what you've seen from MLS, a fifth of the way into the season, not too far, what is your overall thoughts on these handful of teams?
Well, I think the teams are finally giving us their identity, which is a good thing. We mentioned the Seattle game, but I watch Seattle. I know they're good. I know they're going to be in the run of it. They're going to be in the hunt for the championship, but they're just not. There's no eye candy to them. There's just nothing like as a player. Like I don't know that I want to be on that team. I don't care that they're winning. Like of course I want to win. I always say that I want to win, but like at what expense? I don't want to lose the beauty of the game. And to me, they're just not like. I am never like in awe of the way they play on the edge of my seat. It's just like they're going to do their stuff. They remind me of the San Antonio Spurs when they had Duncan. They just do everything the right way, and that's great. And that's good. That's good coaching. I personally think something that Seattle doesn't get credit for is they have great assistant coaches. They always have had great assistant coaches. Schmetzer, you can't deny what his record is, but to me, like I think it's his style with the assistant coach's style, with certain players' style. So, and when I'm looking at these MLS teams, and I think Miami falls in that for me, is to be good in the MLS, your designated players, your foreign players have to just really love the game. And they're not necessarily here for their own self benefit. So, like when I look at Miami, I feel like, and I thought he was in Atlanta. Martinez, what's the Mexican forward that plays for them? I think they're there more for themselves, not for the team. So like, if you don't, St. Louis, they have foreigners. Their foreigners are working harder than everybody else, and then they have their mix of the American players and the players that fit in this league because it is such a physical, hard pace, tiring league. So, like, if you're going to have foreigners, these teams that have these foreigners, they need to pick foreigners that they're not looking just to leave, like just to get a paycheck. They're here to get better, and they're here to take on a league that is a hard league to play in. It's not an easy league to play in. And when they come here, they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to learn this league. They're trying to learn this style of play. And those teams, you look at Seattle, their designated players, man, they show up every game in and game out. When you look at Cincinnati's players, Acosta moves from NYFC. He shows up game in, game out. Vasquez, game in, game out. The kid Brenner up top, game in, game out. I mean, I know he jumped on the scene last year, but like when you just watch their work rate, it was a 1-0 game, that Cincinnati game. But good God, did Vasquez work. He worked out wide. He worked diagonal runs. He got crosses in. He got the touch on the goal that then was disallowed and then became a penalty kick. Like just their work rate and what they mean to a team is really evident. And then when you look at some of the other teams that aren't doing good, like who are these designated players for Kansas City? Because they're not showing up. Granted, Portland's got a lot of injuries and some are to their designated players, but the ones that are playing are not showing up. So like, if you're going to be good in this league, your designated players have to be fully committed to the team, to the league, and to the style of play. And the teams that do well have great designated players that do that help and complement these other players that are role players on these teams. Because Seattle has role players. They have role players that do their job. They're not all designated players. And I think that's like when you look back at the Galaxy teams that were so dominant, Roy Keane was not just here to go to the beach in LA. He was here to win championships. He was here to win. David Beckham was here to win. And then you like, I'm a big Zlatan fan. I think he's a great soccer player. But I think a lot of times he was here for himself because he was at LA and they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything. Carlos Vela, he's here to play. The other kid up top, they're there. Those players are here to play. And that's what makes the leagues and the teams so much better when these designated players show up to play. And I think Phil Neville is going to have a little bit of a problem with this because he's an old school coach from England who you might not like what they're about to tell you, but they're going to tell you the truth. And he's already in the media called out Joseph Martinez and said it's got to be better. And stars don't always like to be called out like that. So I think that's going to be a weird dynamic to see how that goes and plays out going forward after you've just been called out that you're basically saying you ain't doing good enough. You're not doing good enough.
It would
So I
be
think that's
interesting to see behind the scenes if Neville had a conversation with Martinez before. I would assume as a coach, you do have those conversations with the player before you go to the media. But I'm curious how it went,
yeah.
that
I don't know.
dynamic.
Like I know, like when I coached the pro team here in North Carolina, if I said something in the media, the team had already heard it. They had already, and they knew it was coming out. Like, don't be surprised when you open up the newspaper tomorrow or when you turn on the TV, the news tonight. This is what I'm saying, and don't be mad about it. You put yourselves in this situation. It was one game. They had put a, I guess they wanted to go to a party and they put it up under a clock, and was putting my lineup and stuff and corner kick stuff. I was doing all my pregame stuff on the board, and I knocked the clock and I saw the thing. So we lose to a team we should have beat. And afterwards, I brought everybody into the locker room and I was like, you're not here to win games. You are here because you're a professional. People know it. And now you get to go to a party or a bar and you get free drinks and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not what this game's about. And if you're about that, I don't want you here. So, I told them that and I said, and get ready because now the media is going to hear it. And now the fans are going to know it. And now you're going to have to deal with it, which means now you're going to have to show up in practice. Because now they know, why do I want to come watch a game if all you're doing is trying to get through 90 minutes so you can get to some bar somewhere and hang out with everybody? So, if I was going to say something in the media, the team had already heard it. It had already went down. They had already got my information. And from what I know of Neville, I'm sure he had made comments, pulled him aside in practice, pulled him aside after the game, talked to him in the locker room. And then when it went to the media, the English coaches do. My last coach was an English coach, and I loved it. It wasn't everything I always wanted to hear, but I knew it was the truth as he saw it, as he was seeing the game. And for a player, you just want the truth. I want the truth. Why am I not playing? Why am I not doing this? Oh, not like you're in the mix still. We're thinking about it. Just wasn't because you're not good enough. Pep just said it about Walker. In their new lineup at Man City, Walker cannot play. He is not good enough to be a center back playing the system that they're playing. It hurts your feelings. You have two choices: cry about it or go work on it so that you can get into this system.
You mentioned the designated players and the fact that some of the players, Los Angeles and even places like Austin, Miami, it's easy to recruit good designated players because they're phenomenal places to live. People abroad know about these towns and everything it has to offer. Not saying that St. Louis isn't a great place to live. It's beautiful. It has a lot to offer. But in Europe and overseas, people don't know about St. Louis and what it is to America. So when you're going out to recruit players to come play for your organization, how difficult do you think it must be for some of these clubs like St. Louis to get the players like Klaus in and wanting them to perform and play well for them? Because you would imagine a player like Klaus coming to St. Louis knows he's coming to play. He's not coming to lay out on Manhattan Beach and drink margaritas all day. Like, St. Louis is soccer town, and that's kind of what it has to offer to them.
I think a big part of it is who you go after. There's a lot of great players in the world. There's a lot of great players, but it doesn't mean it's going to fit your culture. It's going to fit your lifestyle or your style of team or your style of play. So just to get a big name player, and we see that here in the U.S., oh my goodness, Kyrie Irving goes to Dallas. I was shocked when I watched the ESPN and SportsCenter and all that, and they were like, this is going to be such a dangerous team. Well, who's going to play defense? Kyrie doesn't play defense. Luka doesn't play defense. They both need the ball all the time. There's no denying that they're great players. There's no denying it. But is it a fit? Is it a mix? So, that is these jobs of these technical directors, these sporting directors, that when they're recruiting a player, they're just not looking at film. You got to meet this person. You got to talk to them. You got to understand what they're all about. For me, granted, I'm from the U.S. I know what St. Louis soccer is about. So to go there and to help build a legacy, I would love to have been a part of that. I would love to be a part of New York, New Jersey area because I'm from there, kind of a thing. LA, I understand the beauty of it and how wonderful it is to live there, but I'm an East Coast guy. So do I want to go out onto the West Coast? So when you're recruiting, you can't just recruit based on talent. You have to recruit based on personality, character, and then the style of play that you're going to have. And that's where, when I look at St. Louis, I think they've done a good job. Yeah. I think Miami did a good job of getting people to come see these players in the beginning. oh, they're Latin players. We're a Latin community. Let's go watch them play. And then you watch them play and you're like, well, this is terrible soccer.
Right.
And good fans know what they're watching and they're going to stop coming. And there's no reason for Miami not to have fans in those seats every single game. You just have to get the right type of player that's going to play a certain style. And that also goes with the right type of coach. Like, I think Phil Neville's a great coach, but I've watched Phil Neville play many, many times. He has no Latin style of play in his bones at all. So how is he going to teach Latin style of soccer? Because he doesn't know it. He doesn't understand it. He can't read that part of it. And then he's teaching an English style that they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to do it and you're going to say we want to be successful with these two things, well, you need like a 5-year window to everybody to understand each other. And that's not the sport we're in. Like people
Messi.
Dude, I look at Messi, but Messi
I mean,
now
seriously.
and Busquets in, and now you can get a Spanish style that's European. They speak Spanish with the Latin players. They're going to look up to these players. They're champions. They're World Cup champions, both of them. They've won Champions League, and now it's going to be a lot easier for these players because listen, if I'm one of these Latin players and I go back and look at Phil Neville play soccer, I'm not thinking highly of him as a player because it's not anything that we play like or style of play. I look at him, I liked what he did. He was an overachiever. He got way more out of the game than what his talents were. So, like, I liked his style of play. But he was playing at a time where it was hard-nosed. It was tackle. Your first tackle's a red card tackle. He was playing with Roy Keane, his brother. He was playing with, like, the game was different then. Now he comes here. He's in a league where it's very similar to almost the style of play back then, but with more talented players.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's got his whole team Spanish, it seems like, except for a couple players here and there. So it's hard for him. And now he's going about things where he's calling players out in the media. Is that going to work? Is it not going to work? Like we have to sit and watch and see. But like there's a lot of teams where they're picking players, but like and sometimes I think, are they picking? Is Pablo picking these players that are coming to, or did they have a person that they're not really communicating? Hey, this is great for media. This is great for the fan base. This is great for ticket sales. But then it's not going to be something that produces on the field. And that's a hard thing when you're a coach. We saw it with, the Dallas Mavs. They don't even play their starters in the last 2 games, and the coach had no decision over that. Like, that's a terrible situation to be in as a coach where you're not in charge of your team, basically.
Well, the question then there for Inter Miami is you want this Latin base because Fort Lauderdale and Miami is a ton of people, like Latin, Spanish, Mexican people live in that area. That's the style of soccer they grew up watching, that they're used to watching, that they love watching. So instead of changing the team, and I'm not saying Phil Neville's not a great coach and he doesn't know what he's talking about, he might not even fit the club and the system and what they're trying to do. So who could they bring in and replace Phil Neville? And I'm not saying it's because Phil Neville's a bad coach. Just might not fit the system, and 5 straight losses, that's not a good look for a club. So who could replace Phil Neville?
You're right. It's not always that it's a bad coach. It's just you don't have the personnel with the style of play you play. So for me, and I know he's out of a job, I bring in Tito. He was the coach of Atlanta. He won a championship. He went with Mexico. He can play both. He was at Atlanta. Atlanta was like unstoppable, untouchable. They lose Amarone and him. That's it. That's all they lost. And then they brought in the South American Player of the Year from Argentina to replace Amarone, and they were terrible. But who did they bring in? They bring in De Boer. De Boer's a Dutch coach, plays a very European style, doesn't mix with the Latin players, doesn't mix with the communication, and they're terrible, and nobody liked to play for him. De Boer had just turned Ajax around and was amazing for like 3 years. Then he goes to Italy, doesn't play the Italian style, does bad there. Atlanta doesn't do good there. But it wasn't for a lack of players. It was just a coaching philosophy and a player philosophy that didn't mix. So if I'm in Miami, I'm looking at a coach that has proven himself in the MLS, and Tito he's proven himself. He's done great. He was amazing at Atlanta, and he was amazing with Mexico. So I'm bringing him in and saying, okay, here you go. And we know he's worked with Martinez, and he worked well with Martinez. So here we go. Can you turn this around? And I know Beckham and Phil Neville are really good buddies. I'm sure if they sat down and really hashed it out and did some stuff, like they could talk and figure it out. But I would think soon, if things keep going this way, it's not going to be something that he has to be fired. Europeans are very good at when they know they're not the right fit, they will walk away from a job because it's the best thing for the club.
Hmm.
And I would think Phil Neville will do that sooner or later,
Hmm.
and just stay and just keep taking losses on losses on losses.
One of the big conversations around MLS, even before the season kicked off, was Lionel Messi. And is he going to come to the league? Is he going to play coming off a huge World Cup win with Argentina and how he was the superstar there? There's a ton of momentum he could ride and help out this league here in the United States. Well, we're a fifth away into this season. Do you think Messi, if you were Messi right now watching how this league is playing out, would you want to come play at this point?
Well, I think a lot of times when these players get older, a lot has to do with family.
Right,
So,
I know.
and then what is he going to do next? And is he looking to get into a clothing line business? Is he looking to get into this kind of business? Is he so when I look at Messi right now, and he is riding a wave of momentum from the World Cup that I don't think the MLS necessarily helps his wave of momentum. He's proved
No,
in
but
the
the other
World
way
Cup
around, no?
other way that he
Like,
would help
he
MLS.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, 100%. Oh, oh. Listen, Pele was a huge signing. Cruyff was a huge
Right,
signing. George Best was a huge signing. Nothing will compare to Messi coming to the MLS.
right.
I mean,
No, totally.
ever. But I think what Barcelona is doing with Xavi, who's one of his teammates, which is one of his mentors when he was first there, I think he's looking at Barcelona. And if we're going to say to him, look, we're going to get all the other owners to help pay, and we're going to give you a discount on becoming a team owner, is that still going to match what supposedly the Saudi Arabia League is about to give him? Because he's setting up, and I'm sure his family is set forever in the future. But the money that they're talking about is he's setting up a couple families, and he's maybe taking care of his hometown in Argentina and everybody. And I don't
Seriously.
think the MLS can give him that just by becoming an owner. Messi doesn't come across as business savvy as David Beckham. So when David Beckham got it, and he has his wife to go with, and he has backers, and he has people that'll help him. He knew that by doing this, he was going to his portfolio was just going to explode, which it has done tenfold. I
Right.
don't think Messi is that type of businessman where he wants to be. Beckham's everywhere. All like he's an ambassador for this game. He's ambassador here. He does this. He's this for England. Some days he's here. He said with this, he opening a restaurant here. His wife and him have a clothing line. They're doing this here. I don't think Messi seems like that he wants to be that hardworking when he's done playing.
I
It just
completely
doesn't
agree.
seem like that type of a person.
Yeah.
And for him to make this work in the MLS after his playing career, you're gonna have to hustle. You're gonna have to work it because we are still in America trying to get these fans to become as dedicated as they are in Europe.
The question would be for Messi, does he want his kids, his wife to come over and experience the United States? Does he want to experience the United States? I mean, for his kids, they'd come over and just experience, like, they'd learn English, they would learn, how to be involved, maybe go to college stateside, who knows? But like, even like you said, for him, just if he wanted that for him, it would be a good decision. I just would be very interested if this is the right timing for him to come over and play. And you mentioned David Beckham. The biggest pop culture storyline, Scotty, at one point this summer was Brooklyn Beckham's wedding. Then he got married to like some billionaire's daughter or something.
Right.
I don't understand how that was the biggest pop culture story, but even like some of the pop culture podcasts I listen to were talking about it. And I'm like, how did Brooklyn get so famous off of his dad, but obviously his mom as well? And they've done a really good job of branding themselves as a whole, like kind of Kardashian-esque, honestly.
100%. They have done a phenomenal job becoming the Beckhams. And I mean,
Yeah.
like, I thought Beckham was a really great passer. He had a lot of problems in his games, but you look at that guy's career: Man U, Real Madrid, AC Milan, PSG, the Galaxy. I mean, he's played some amazing places, like
Yeah.
just an amazing teammates, and then his through all those places he's played, just the clientele and the friendships that he has formed. Like, man, the guy has done amazing, amazing, amazing things for himself. Being a great passer, being a great passer.
The one thing that Beckham hasn't done that I want to see is a reality show. I need to see the behind the scenes of Victoria Beckham, David Beckham, the clothing line, the fashion of it all, the soccer of it all. the kids of it all. What are their kids into? I want to see the wedding. I like, these people kind of
Right.
videotape their weddings. Like, why didn't we get that on a reality show? I think
I don't
that's
know.
a lost opportunity right there that or Hulu should have hit up. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe they will one day. We shall see. One player from MLS that we likely will see on April 19th for the national team, and you touched on it a handful of times, is Brandon Vasquez. I would love to see him back in that mix against Mexico. That's an opportunity that he had a team to play for. He chose the United States. I think that's a huge stage for him, and he's done well in MLS. Why not give him another call up, another opportunity? Because we both know, Scotty, you've come in guns a-blazing on this show. Like, we need to talk about the U.S. men's national team and what is happening over there. And he could be a part of fixing it. He won't be the whole thing. But a team like that, it's like the small pieces, the little things you do, the details can fix the
Yeah,
team.
yeah. Everything that I see about Vasquez makes me like, as a player, I want to play with this guy. And it's those type of players that can change the dynamic of a team. And right now, the US national team needs something to kickstart it. Like tonight watching the game and listening to Hudson's interview, like, listen, do you want the job or do you not want the job? Like, I don't understand what you're doing. Like, if I'm in his position, like, I'm saying, look, I've taken over. I understand part of it was the World Cup and was with Berhalter, but guess what? I was there too. I've had a lot of say in things. If you're bringing Berhalter back, great, bring him back. I loved working with them. But if you're not bringing him back, I want this job. We just jumped Germany. We're 13, they're 14th. We're making moves. We're bringing in players. I'm meeting with players in Europe. I'm talking to players to try to get them to pick the U.S. over their other countries that they can pick. Like, I'm doing a lot of work. Like, I don't want this to be for naught. Part of his interview is I respect the country, I respect the fans, they need it, they deserve it, blah blah blah. And then, well, do you want the coaching job? Well, I'm not really sure that that's the time for me or place to talk. Like, yes, it is. Do you want it or don't you want it? Like, if you don't listen, I don't want Jim Curtin to get the job, but at least he came out and said, I want the job. I want to be like whoever's going to be the coach. We need them to want it, to want the job. And there's things that go. Leicester City could have just signed Jesse Marsh. Jesse Marsh could have went to somewhere else in England. Sorry, it's missing my brain right now. But he turned them both down. Like, why are you turning down jobs in England? These are good coaching jobs. These are good places to coach, and I'm sure it's decent enough money. Like, why are you turning it down? Do you want the national team job? Like I just don't understand. Like, and I understand, like, oh, it's another, 3 years away. Like, but time flies. Like, we were just saying that about the Women's World Cup, and what is it, like 100 days away? It's like, it's right
Yeah.
here. It's
hmm
right here. Like, tonight they're
99
talking
days.
about, well, now you got to get a big screen TV because you're going to have to watch a lot of games on TV because this was our last game. Like, yeah, this is our last game. Malpew goes down. Julie Ertz comes back and looks pretty good. Julie Ertz comes in and looks pretty good and makes Sullivan look like she's not been very good. Like what we now played Ireland 2 times in a row. They play the same way, and we had no answers for him in the second game. Like, does that mean we need different players? Like now we're in trouble. Now, like, to me, we're fighting it. Now we're fighting time, and we don't have a lot of time because this thing's about to get started. Like, to me is like, if we keep saying, oh, we got time. Oh, well, we got to get a sporting director first, and then we got to get a coach. We're playing games. Things are happening. And if you got to believe that players want to know who they're coming in to play with. They want to know, what style are we going to play? Is this going to be good for me? Especially if I'm picking the U.S. over Spain, if I'm picking the U.S. over Belgium, if these players are picking, like, they need to know what they're picking and what coach they're picking. So like, when I watch Hudson, I'm like, listen, if you want the job, you got to say it. Because if you keep saying what you're saying, then I don't want you to be the coach.
hmm
Like, you gotta want this. You gotta want to own it. You want to get ownership of this job, and then let's go, because it does seem like the players like them.
Oh,
It
yeah.
seems so. Like, let's go, let's go. And here you go. Here you go. You got an opportunity that you're not going to get these guys from Leeds. You're not going to get these guys that are playing in Europe, and that's okay. So let's see what we got. Figure out, and even if it's just figuring out your bench, maybe, or a couple reserve players, like, that's great. That's okay. But let's start bringing in and building a team based on your character and who you want to work with too. But to keep coming on interviews and saying, yeah, I'm not really sure if I like, you want the job or you
Too
don't want the job.
passive.
Yeah, I agree. It's you gotta want it. Like if someone called me and said, "Hey, you want the national?" Yep, yes, I do. Yeah. When can I show up? Tomorrow? I'll be there
When,
tomorrow.
yeah. When you send in the gear, I'll be there. When am I getting my car to get into the building? Absolutely. There has to be, especially for positions where you're talking about the international team, you're talking about such a high profile position. You want the person in that role to want it just as bad as the next person, and you want them to fight for it. And I know he got the position in such an odd way, and U.S. soccer is in such an awkward, weird spot with the men's national team. But that doesn't reflect you. That just reflects what's happening behind the scenes. Go out and do your job. So plenty of soccer left to be played. We have NWSL back in action this weekend after the FIFA window. The U.S. women's national team has 99 days, double digits, before the World Cup kicks off in Australia, New Zealand, and then MLS is back in MatchDay. So we've got a ton of soccer. But if you guys are watching, listening, please drop your favorite teams below. Who are some players that you enjoy watching? What are some conversations that you are having with your friends, things that you like listening and hearing more about? We want to hear what you guys are interested in so we can have conversations with you. So make sure to drop us something on our YouTube channel below. Leave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube at SFTP Pod, and we will see you back here next Wednesday.
Have a great week.